Chapter 13 of At the Back of the North Wind. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. Chapter 13. The Seaside. Diamond and his mother sat down upon the edge of the rough grass that bordered the sand. The sun was just far enough past its highest not to shine in their eyes when they looked eastward. A sweet little wind blew on their left side, and comforted the mother without letting her know what it was that comforted her. Away before them stretched the sparkling waters of the ocean, every wave of which flashed out its own delight back in the face of the great sun, which looked down from the stillness of its blue house with glorious silent face upon its flashing children. On each hand the shore rounded outwards, forming a little bay. There were no white cliffs here, as further north and south, and the place was rather dreary, but the sky got at them so much the better. Not a house, not a creature was in sight. Dry sand was about their feet, and under them thin wiry grass that just managed to grow out of the poverty-stricken shore. "Oh dear," said Diamond's mother with a deep sigh. "It's a sad world." "Is it?" said Diamond. "I didn't know." "How should you know, child? You've been too well taken care of, I trust." "Oh yes, I have," returned Diamond. "I'm sorry. I thought you were taken care of too. I thought my father took care of you. I will ask him about it. I think he must have forgotten." "Dear boy," said his mother, "your father's the best man in the world." "So I thought," returned Diamond with triumph. "I was sure of it. Well, doesn't he take very good care of you?" "Yes, yes, he does," answered his mother, bursting into tears. "But who's to take care of him? And how is he to take care of us if he's got nothing to eat himself?" "Oh dear," said Diamond with a gasp. "Hasn't he got anything to eat? Oh, I must go home to him." "No, no, child. He's not come to that yet. But what's to become of us, I don't know." "Are you very hungry, mother? There's the basket. I thought you put something to eat in it." "Oh, you darling stupid! I didn't say I was hungry," returned his mother, smiling through her tears. "Then I don't understand you at all," said Diamond. "Do tell me what's the matter." "There are people in the world who have nothing to eat, Diamond." "Then I suppose they don't stop in it any longer. They what you call die, don't they?" "Yes, they do. How would you like that?" "I don't know. I never tried. But I suppose they go where they get something to eat." "Like enough they don't want it," said his mother petulantly. "That's all right then," said Diamond, thinking I dare say more than he chose to put in words. "Is it though? Poor boy! How little you know about things. Mr. Coleman's lost all his money, and your father has nothing to do, and we shall have nothing to eat by and by." "Are you sure, mother?" "Sure of what?" "Sure that we shall have nothing to eat." "No, thank heaven! I'm not sure of it. I hope not." "Then I can't understand it, mother. There's a piece of gingerbread in the basket, I know." "Oh, you little bird! You have no more sense than a sparrow that picks what it wants, and never thinks of the winter and the frost and the snow." "Ah, yes, I see. But the birds get through the winter, don't they?" "Some of them fall dead on the ground." "They must die some time. They wouldn't like to be birds always. Would you, mother?" "What a child it is!" thought his mother, but she said nothing. "Oh, now I remember," Diamond went on. "Father told me that day I went to Epping Forest with him, that the rose bushes and the may bushes and the holly bushes were the birds' barns, for there were the hips and the haws and the holly berries, all ready for winter." "Yes, that's all very true. So you see the birds are provided for, but there are no such barns for you and me, Diamond." "Ain't there?" "No, we've got to work for our bread." "Then let's go and work," said Diamond, getting up. "It's no use. We've not got anything to do." Then let's wait." "Then we shall starve." "No. There's the basket. Do you know, mother, I think I shall call that basket the barn." "It's not a very big one. And when it's empty, where are we then?" "At auntie's cupboard," returned Diamond promptly. "But we can't eat auntie's things all up, and leave her to starve." "No, no. We'll go back to father before that. He'll have found a cupboard somewhere by that time." "How do you know that?" "I don't know it. But I haven't even got a cupboard, and I've always had plenty to eat. I've heard you say I had too much sometimes." "But I tell you that's because I've had a cupboard for you, child." "And when yours was empty, auntie opened hers." "But that can't go on." "How do you know? I think there must be a big cupboard somewhere, out of which the little cupboards are filled, you know, mother." "Well, I wish I could find the door of that cupboard," said his mother. But the same moment she stopped, and was silent for a good while. I cannot tell whether Diamond knew what she was thinking, but I think I know. She had heard something at church the day before, which came back upon her. Something like this, that she hadn't to eat for tomorrow as well as for today, and that what was not wanted couldn't be missed. So instead of saying anything more, she stretched out her hand for the basket, and she and Diamond had their dinner. And Diamond did enjoy it, for the drive and the fresh air had made him quite hungry, and he did not, like his mother, trouble himself about what they should dine off that day week. The fact was, he had lived so long without any food at all at the back of the north wind, that he knew quite well that food was not essential to existence, that in fact, under certain circumstances, people could live without it well enough. His mother did not speak much during their dinner. After it was over she helped him to walk about a little, but he was not able for much, and soon got tired. He did not get fretful, though. He was too glad of having the sun and the wind again, to fret because he could not run about. He lay down on the dry sand, and his mother covered him with a shawl. She then sat by his side, and took a bit of work from her pocket. But Diamond felt rather sleepy, and turned on his side and gazed sleepily over the sand. A few yards off he saw something fluttering. "What is that, mother?" he said. "Only a bit of paper," she answered. "It flutters more than a bit of paper would, I think," said Diamond. "I'll go and see if you like," said his mother. "My eyes are none of the best." So she rose and went, and found that they were both right, for it was a little book, partly buried in the sand, but several of its leaves were clear of the sand, and these the wind kept blowing about in a very flutterful manner. She took it up and brought it to Diamond. "What is it, mother?" he asked. "Some nursery rhymes, I think," she answered. "I'm too sleepy," said Diamond. "Do read some of them to me." "Yes, I will," she said, and began one. "But this is such nonsense," she said again. "I will try to find a better one." She turned the leaves searching, but 3 times, with sudden puffs, the wind blew the leaves rustling back to the same verses. "Do read that one," said Diamond, who seemed to be of the same mind as the wind. "It sounded very nice. I am sure it is a good one." So his mother thought it might amuse him, though she couldn't find any sense in it. She never thought he might understand it, although she could not. Now I do not exactly know what the mother read, but this is what Diamond heard, or thought afterwards that he had heard. He was, however, as I have said, very sleepy, and when he thought he understood the verses he may have been only dreaming better ones. This is how they went. I know a river whose waters run asleep, run, run, ever singing in the shallows dumb, in the hollows sleeping so deep, and all the swallows that dip their feathers in the hollows, or in the shallows, are the merriest swallows of all, for the nests they bake, with the clay they cake, with the water they shake from their wings, that rake the water out of the shallows, or the hollows, will hold together in any weather. And so the swallows are the merriest fellows, and have the merriest children, and are built so narrow, like the head of an arrow to cut the air, and go just where the nicest water is flowing, and the nicest dust is blowing, for each so narrow, like head of an arrow, is only a barrow to carry the mud he makes from the nicest water flowing, and the nicest dust that is blowing, to build his nest for her he loves best, with the nicest cakes which the sunshine bakes, all for their merry children, all so callow, with beaks that follow gaping and hollow, wider and wider after their father or after their mother, the food provider, who brings them a spider or a worm, the poor hider down in the earth, so there's no dearth for their beaks, as yellow as the buttercups growing beside the flowing of the singing river, always and ever growing and blowing. For fast as the sheep awake or asleep, crop them and crop them, they cannot stop them, but up they creep and on they go blowing. And so with the daisies, the little white praises, they grow and they blow, and they spread out their crown and they praise the sun, and when he goes down their praising is done, and they fold up their crown and they sleep every one, till over the plain he's shining amain, and they're at it again, praising and praising, such low songs raising, that no one hears them but the sun who rears them, and the sheep that bite them are the quietest sheep awake or asleep, with the merriest bleat, and the little lambs are the merriest lambs they forget to eat, for the frolic in their feet, and the lambs and their dams are the whitest sheep, with the woolliest wool, and the longest wool, and the trailingest tails, and they shine like snow in the grasses that grow by the shining river that sings for ever, and the sheep and the lambs are merry for ever, because the river sings, and they drink it, and the lambs and their dams are quiet and white, because of their diet, for what they bite is buttercups yellow, and daisies white, and grasses green as the river can make it, with wind as mellow to kiss it, and shake it as never was seen, but here in the hollows beside the river, where all the swallows are merriest of fellows. For the nests they make with the clay they cake in the sunshine, bake till they are like bone, as dry in the wind as a marble stone, so firm they bind the grass in the clay that dries in the wind, the sweetest wind that blows by the river flowing for ever. But never you find whence comes the wind that blows on the hollows, and over the shallows where dip the swallows alive. It blows the life as it goes awake or asleep, into the river that sings as it flows, and the life it blows into the sheep, awake or asleep, with the woolliest wool and the trailingest tails, and it never fails, gentle and cool, to wave the wool and to toss the grass, as the lambs and the sheep over it pass, and tug and bite with their teeth so white, and then with a sweep of their trailing tails smooth it again, and it grows amain, and amain it grows, and the wind as it blows tosses the swallows over the hollows, and down on the shallows, till every feather doth shake and quiver, and all their feathers go all together, blowing the life and the joy so rife into the swallows that skim the shallows, and have the yellowest children. For the wind that blows is the life of the river, flowing for ever, that washes the grasses still as it passes, and feeds the daisies and the little white praises, and the buttercups bonny, so golden and sunny with butter and honey, that whiten the sheep awake or asleep, that nibble and bite and grow whiter than white, and merry and quiet on the sweet diet fed by the river, and tossed for ever by the wind that tosses the swallow that crosses over the shallows, dipping his wings to gather the water, and bake the cake that the wind shall make as hard as a bone, as dry as a stone. It's all in the wind that blows from behind, and all in the river that flows for ever, and all the grasses, and the white daisies, and the merry sheep awake or asleep, and the happy swallows skimming the shallows, and it's all in the wind that blows from behind. Here Diamond became aware that his mother had stopped reading. "Why don't you go on, mother dear?" he asked. "It's such nonsense," said his mother. "I believe it would go on for ever." "That's just what it did," said Diamond. "What did?" she asked. "Why, the river. That's almost the very tune it used to sing." His mother was frightened, for she thought the fever was coming on again, so she did not contradict him. "Who made that poem?" asked Diamond. "I don't know," she answered. "Some silly woman for her children, I suppose, and then thought it good enough to print." "She must have been at the back of the north wind some time or other anyhow," said Diamond. "She couldn't have got a hold of it anywhere else. That's just how it went." And he began to chant bits of it here and there. But his mother said nothing for fear of making him worse, and she was very glad indeed when she saw her brother-in-law jogging along in his little cart. They lifted Diamond in, and got up themselves, and away they went, home again, home again, home again, as Diamond sang. But he soon grew quiet, and before they reached Sandwich he was fast asleep and dreaming of the country at the back of the north wind. End of chapter 13. Recording by Maricel Cui. Chapter 14 of At the Back of the North Wind. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. Chapter 14. Old Diamond. After this, Diamond recovered so fast that in a few days he was quite able to go home as soon as his father had a place for them to go. Now his father, having saved a little money, and finding that no situation offered itself, had been thinking over a new plan. A strange occurrence it was which turned his thoughts in that direction. He had a friend in the Bloomsbury region who lived by letting out cabs and horses to the cabmen. This man, happening to meet him one day as he was returning from an unsuccessful application, said to him, "Why don't you set up for yourself now? In the cab line, I mean." "I haven't enough for that," answered Diamond's father. "You must have saved a goodish bit, I should think. Just come home with me now and look at a horse I can let you have cheap. I bought him only a few weeks ago, thinking he'd do for a hansom, but I was wrong. He's got bone enough for a wagon, but a wagon ain't a hansom. He ain't got go enough for a hansom. You see, parties as takes hansoms want to go like the wind, and he ain't got wind enough, for he ain't so young as he once was. But for a four-wheeler as takes families and their luggages, he's the very horse. He'd carry a small house any day. I bought him cheap, and I'll sell him cheap." "Oh, I don't want him," said Diamond's father. "A body must have time to think over an affair of so much importance. And there's the cab too. That would come to a deal of money." "I could fit you there, I dare say," said his friend. "But come and look at the animal anyhow." "Since I lost my own old pair, as was Mr. Coleman's," said Diamond's father, turning to accompany the cabmaster, "I ain't almost got the heart to look a horse in the face. It's 1,000 pities to part man and horse." "So it is," returned his friend sympathetically. But what was the ex-coachman's delight when, on going into the stable where his friend led him, he found the horse he wanted him to buy was no other than his own old Diamond, grown very thin and bony and long-legged, as if they had been doing what they could to fit him for handsome work. "He ain't a handsome horse," said Diamond's father indignantly. "Well, you're right. He ain't handsome, but he's a good un," said his owner. "Who says he ain't handsome? He's one of the handsomest horses a gentleman's coachman ever druv," said Diamond's father, remarking to himself under his breath, "though I says it as shouldn't," for he did not feel inclined all at once to confess that his own old horse could have sunk so low. "Well," said his friend, "all I say is, there's an animal for you, as strong as a church, and 'll go like a train. Leastways a parley," he added, correcting himself. But the coachman had a lump in his throat and tears in his eyes, for the old horse, hearing his voice, had turned his long neck, and when his old friend went up to him and laid his hand on his side, he whinnied for joy and laid his big head on his master's breast. This settled the matter. The coachman's arms were round the horse's neck in a moment, and he fairly broke down and cried. The cabmaster had never been so fond of a horse himself as to hug him like that, but he saw in a moment how it was, and he must have been a good-hearted fellow, for I never heard of such an idea coming into the head of any other man with a horse to sell. Instead of putting something on to the price because he was now pretty sure of selling him, he actually took a pound off what he meant to ask for him, saying to himself it was a shame to part old friends. Diamond's father, as soon as he came to himself, turned and asked how much he wanted for the horse. "I see you're old friends," said the owner. "It's my own old Diamond. I liked him far the best of the pair, though the other was good. You ain't got him too, have you?" "No, nothing in the stable to match him there." "I believe you," said the coachman, "but you'll be wanting a long price for him, I know." "No, not so much. I bought him cheap, and as I say, he ain't for my work." The end of it was that Diamond's father bought old Diamond again, along with a four-wheeled cab, and as there were some rooms to be had over the stable, he took them, wrote to his wife to come home, and set up as a cabman. End of chapter 14. Recording by Maricel Quee. Chapter 15 of At the Back of the North Wind. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. Chapter 15. The Muse. It was late in the afternoon when Diamond and his mother and the baby reached London. I was so full of Diamond that I forgot to tell you a baby had arrived in the meantime. His father was waiting for them with his own cab, but they had not told Diamond who the horse was, for his father wanted to enjoy the pleasure of his surprise when he found it out. He got in with his mother without looking at the horse, and his father, having put up Diamond's carpet-bag and his mother's little trunk, got upon the box himself and drove off. And Diamond was quite proud of riding home in his father's own carriage. But when he got to the Mews, he could not help being a little dismayed at first. And if he had never been to the back of the North Wind, I am afraid he would have cried a little. But instead of that, he said to himself it was a fine thing all the old furniture was there. And instead of helping his mother to be miserable at the change, he began to find out all the advantages of the place. For every place has some advantages, and they are always better worth knowing than the disadvantages. Certainly the weather was depressing, for a thick, dull, persistent rain was falling by the time they reached home. But happily the weather is very changeable, and besides there was a good fire burning in the room, which their neighbour with the drunken husband had attended to for them, and the tea things were put out, and the kettle was boiling on the fire. And with a good fire and tea and bread and butter, things cannot be said to be miserable. Diamond's father and mother were, notwithstanding, rather miserable, and Diamond began to feel a kind of darkness beginning to spread over his own mind. But at the same moment he said to himself, "This will never do. I can't give in to this. I've been to the back of the North Wind. Things go right there. And so I must try to get things to go right here. I've got to fight the miserable things. They shan't make me miserable if I can help it." I do not mean that he thought these very words. They are perhaps too grown up for him to have thought, but they represent the kind of thing that was in his heart and his head, and when heart and head go together, nothing can stand before them. "What nice bread and butter this is!" said Diamond. "I'm glad you like it, my dear," said his father. "I bought the butter myself at a little shop around the corner." "It's very nice, thank you, father. Oh, there's baby waking. I'll take him." "Sit still, Diamond," said his mother. "Go on with your bread and butter. You're not strong enough to lift him yet." So she took the baby herself and set him on her knee. Then Diamond began to amuse him, and went on till the little fellow was shrieking with laughter. For the baby's world was his mother's arms, and the drizzling rain and the dreary Mews, and even his father's troubled face, could not touch him. What cared baby for the loss of 100 situations? Yet neither father nor mother thought him hard-hearted because he crowed and laughed in the middle of their troubles. On the contrary, his crowing and laughing were infectious. His little heart was so full of merriment that it could not hold it all, and it ran over into theirs. Father and mother began to laugh too, and Diamond laughed till he had a fit of coughing, which frightened his mother, and made them all stop. His father took the baby, and his mother put him to bed. But it was indeed a change to them all, not only from Sandwich, but from their old place. Instead of the great river where the huge barges with their mighty brown and yellow sails went tacking from side to side like little pleasure skiffs, and where the long thin boats shot past with 8 and sometimes 12 rowers, their windows now looked out upon a dirty paved yard. And there was no garden more for Diamond to run into when he pleased, with gay flowers about his feet, and solemn sun-filled trees over his head. Neither was there a wooden wall at the back of his bed, with a hole in it for North Wind to come in at when she liked. Indeed, there was such a high wall, and there were so many houses about the mews, that North Wind seldom got into the place at all, except when something must be done, and she had a grand cleaning out like other housewives, while the partition at the head of Diamond's new bed only divided it from the room occupied by a cabman who drank too much beer and came home chiefly to quarrel with his wife and pinch his children. It was dreadful to Diamond to hear the scolding and the crying, but it could not make him miserable, because he had been at the back of the north wind. If my reader find it hard to believe that Diamond should be so good, he must remember that he had been to the back of the north wind. If he never knew a boy so good, did he ever know a boy that had been to the back of the north wind? It was not in the least strange of Diamond to behave as he did. On the contrary, it was thoroughly sensible of him. We shall see how he got on. End of chapter 15. Recording by Maricel Kui. Chapter 16 of At the Back of the North Wind. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. Chapter 16. Diamond makes a beginning. The wind blew loud, but Diamond slept a deep sleep, and never heard it. My own impression is that every time when Diamond slept well and remembered nothing about it in the morning, he had been all that night at the back of the north wind. I am almost sure that was how he woke so refreshed, and felt so quiet and hopeful all the day. Indeed, he said this much, though not to me, that always when he woke from such a sleep, there was something in his mind, he could not tell what, could not tell whether it was the last far off sounds of the river dying away in the distance, or some of the words of the endless song his mother had read to him on the seashore. Sometimes he thought it must have been the twittering of the swallows over the shallows, you know, but it may have been the chirping of the dingy sparrows picking up their breakfast in the yard. How can I tell? I don't know what I know, I only know what I think, and to tell the truth, I am more for the swallows than the sparrows. When he knew he was coming awake, he would sometimes try hard to keep hold of the words of what seemed a new song, one he had not heard before, a song in which the words and the music somehow appeared to be all one. But even when he thought he had got them well fixed in his mind, ever as he came awaker, as he would say, one line faded away out of it, and then another, till at last there was nothing left but some lovely picture of water or grass or daisies, or something else very common, but with all the commonness polished off it, and the lovely soul of it, which people so seldom see, and alas, yet seldomer believe in, shining out. But after that he would sing the oddest, loveliest little songs to the baby, of his own making, his mother said. But Diamond said he did not make them. They were made somewhere inside him, and he knew nothing about them till they were coming out. When he woke that first morning he got up at once, saying to himself, "I've been ill long enough, and have given a great deal of trouble. I must try and be of use now, and help my mother." When he went into her room he found her lighting the fire, and his father just getting out of bed. They had only the one room, besides the little one, not much more than a closet, in which Diamond slept. He began at once to set things to rights, but the baby waking up, he took him and nursed him till his mother had got the breakfast ready. She was looking gloomy, and his father was silent, and indeed, except Diamond had done all he possibly could to keep out the misery that was trying to get in at doors and windows, he too would have grown miserable, and then they would have been all miserable together. But to try to make others comfortable is the only way to get right comfortable ourselves, and that comes partly of not being able to think so much about ourselves when we are helping other people, for ourselves will always do pretty well if we don't pay them too much attention. Ourselves are like some little children who will be happy enough so long as they are left to their own games, but when we begin to interfere with them, and make them presents of too nice playthings, or too many sweet things, they begin at once to fret and spoil. "Why, Diamond, child," said his mother at last, "you're as good to your mother as if you were a girl, nursing the baby and toasting the bread and sweeping up the hearth. I declare a body would think you had been among the fairies." Could Diamond have had greater praise or greater pleasure? You see, when he forgot his self, his mother took care of his self, and loved and praised his self. Our own praises poison ourselves, and puff and swell them up till they lose all shape and beauty, and become like great toadstools. But the praises of father or mother do ourselves good, and comfort them and make them beautiful. They never do them any harm. If they do any harm, it comes of our mixing some of our own praises with them, and that turns them nasty and slimy and poisonous. When his father had finished his breakfast, which he did rather in a hurry, he got up and went down into the yard to get out his horse and put him to the cab. "Won't you come and see the cab, Diamond?" he said. "Yes, please, father, if mother can spare me a minute," answered Diamond. "Bless the child, I don't want him," said his mother cheerfully. But as he was following his father out of the door, she called him back. "Diamond, just hold the baby 1 minute. I have something to say to your father." So Diamond sat down again, took the baby in his lap, and began poking his face into its little body, laughing and singing all the while, so that the baby crowed like a little bantam. And what he sang was something like this, such nonsense to those that couldn't understand it, but not to the baby, who got all the good in the world out of it. "Baby's a-sleeping, wake up, baby, for all the swallows are the merriest fellows, and have the yellowest children, who would go sleeping and snore like a gaby, disturbing his mother and father and brother, and all a-boring their ears with his snoring, 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 for himself and no other, for himself in particular. Wake up, baby, sit up perpendicular, hark to the gushing, hark to the rushing, where the sheep are the woolliest, and the lambs the unruliest, and their tails the whitest, and their eyes the brightest, and baby's the bonniest, and baby's the funniest, and baby's the shiniest, and baby's the tiniest, and baby's the merriest, and baby's the worriest of all the lambs that plague their dams, and mother's the wisest of all the dams that feed the lambs that go cropping without stopping, and father's the best of all the swallows that build their nests out of the shining shallows, and he has the merriest children, that's baby and Diamond and Diamond and baby, and baby and Diamond and Diamond and baby." Here Diamond's knees went off in a wild dance, which tossed the baby about, and shook the laughter out of him in immoderate peals. His mother had been listening at the door to the last few lines of his song, and came in with the tears in her eyes. She took the baby from him, gave him a kiss, and told him to run to his father. By the time Diamond got into the yard, the horse was between the shafts, and his father was looping the traces on. Diamond went round to look at the horse. The sight of him made him feel very queer. He did not know much about different horses, and all other horses than their own were very much the same to him, but he could not make it out. This was Diamond, and it wasn't Diamond. Diamond didn't hang his head like that, yet the head that was hanging was very like the one that Diamond used to hold so high. Diamond's bones didn't show through his skin like that. But the skin they pushed out of shape so was very like Diamond's skin, and the bones might be Diamond's bones, for he had never seen the shape of them. But when he came round in front of the old horse, and he put out his long neck, and began sniffing at him and rubbing his upper lip and his nose on him, then Diamond saw it could be no other than old Diamond, and he did just as his father had done before, put his arms round his neck and cried, but not much. "Ain't it jolly, father?" he said. "Was there ever anybody so lucky as me? Dear old Diamond!" And he hugged the horse again, and kissed both his big hairy cheeks. He could only manage one at a time, however, the other cheek was so far off on the other side of his big head. His father mounted the box with just the same air, as Diamond thought, with which he had used to get upon the coach box, and Diamond said to himself, "Father's as grand as ever, anyhow." He had kept his brown livery coat, only his wife had taken the silver buttons off, and put brass ones instead, because they did not think it polite to Mr. Coleman in his fallen fortunes to let his crest be seen upon the box of a cab. Old Diamond had kept just his collar, and that had the silver crest upon it still, for his master thought nobody would notice that, and so let it remain for a memorial of the better days of which it reminded him, not unpleasantly, seeing it had been by no fault either of his or of the old horse's that they had come down in the world together. "Oh, father, do let me drive a bit," said Diamond, jumping up on the box beside him. His father changed places with him at once, putting the reins into his hands. Diamond gathered them up eagerly. "Don't pull at his mouth," said his father. "Just feel at it gently to let him know you're there and attending to him. That's what I call talking to him through the reins." "Yes, father, I understand," said Diamond. Then to the horse he said, "Go on, Diamond." And old Diamond's ponderous bulk began at once to move to the voice of the little boy. But before they had reached the entrance of the mews, another voice called after young Diamond, which in his turn he had to obey, for it was that of his mother. "Diamond, Diamond!" it cried. And Diamond pulled the reins, and the horse stood still as a stone. "Husband," said his mother, coming up, "you're never going to trust him with the reins, a baby like that?" "He must learn some day, and he can't begin too soon. I see already he's a born coachman," said his father proudly, "and I don't see well how he could escape it, for my father and my grandfather, that's his great grandfather, was all coachmen, I'm told, so it must come natural to him, any one would think. Besides, you see, old Diamond's as proud of him as we were our own selves, wife. Don't you see how he's turning round his ears, with the mouths of them open, for the first word he speaks to tumble in? He's too well bred to turn his head, you know." "Well, but, husband, I can't do without him to day. Everything's got to be done, you know. It's my first day here, and there's that baby." "Bless you, wife, I never meant to take him away, only to the bottom of Endell Street. He can watch his way back." "No, thank you, father, not to day," said Diamond. "Mother wants me. Perhaps she'll let me go another day." "Very well, my man," said his father, and took the reins which Diamond was holding out to him. Diamond got down, a little disappointed of course, and went with his mother, who was too pleased to speak. She only took hold of his hand as tight as if she had been afraid of his running away instead of glad that he would not leave her. Now, although they did not know it, the owner of the stables, the same man who had sold the horse to his father, had been standing just inside one of the stable doors, with his hands in his pockets, and had heard and seen all that passed, and from that day John Stonecrop took a great fancy to the little boy, and this was the beginning of what came of it. The same evening, just as Diamond was feeling tired of the day's work, and wishing his father would come home, Mr. Stonecrop knocked at the door. His mother went and opened it. "Good evening, ma'am," said he. "Is the little master in?" "Yes, to be sure he is. At your service, I'm sure, Mr. Stonecrop," said his mother. "No, no, ma'am. It's I'm at his service. I'm just a going out with my own cab, and if he likes to come with me, he shall drive my old horse till he's tired." "It's getting rather late for him," said his mother thoughtfully. "You see, he's been an invalid." Diamond thought, what a funny thing! How could he have been an invalid when he did not even know what the word meant? But of course his mother was right. "Oh, well," said Mr. Stonecrop, "I can just let him drive through Bloomsbury Square, and then he shall run home again." "Very good, sir, and I'm much obliged to you," said his mother. And Diamond, dancing with delight, got his cap, put his hand in Mr. Stonecrop's, and went with him to the yard where the cab was waiting. He did not think the horse looked nearly so nice as Diamond, nor Mr. Stonecrop nearly so grand as his father, but he was none the less pleased. He got up on the box, and his new friend got up beside him. "What's the horse's name?" whispered Diamond, as he took the reins from the man. "It's not a nice name," said Mr. Stonecrop. "You needn't call him by it. I didn't give it him. He'll go well enough without it. Give the boy a whip, Jack. I never carries one when I drive old." He didn't finish the sentence. Jack handed Diamond a whip, with which, by holding it half down the stick, he managed just to flack the haunches of the horse, and away he went. "Mind the gate," said Mr. Stonecrop, and Diamond did mind the gate, and guided the nameless horse through it in safety, pulling him this way and that according as was necessary. Diamond learned to drive all the sooner that he had been accustomed to do what he was told, and could obey the smallest hint in a moment. Nothing helps one to get on like that. Some people don't know how to do what they are told. They have not been used to it, and they neither understand quickly or are able to turn what they do understand into action quickly. With an obedient mind one learns the rights of things fast enough, for it is the law of the universe, and to obey is to understand. "Look out!" cried Mr. Stonecrop, as they were turning the corner into Bloomsbury Square. It was getting dusky now. A cab was approaching rather rapidly from the opposite direction, and Diamond pulling aside, and the other driver pulling up. They only just escaped a collision. Then they knew each other. "Why, Diamond, it's a bad beginning to run into your own father," cried the driver. "But, father, wouldn't it have been a bad ending to run into your own son?" said Diamond in return, and the two men laughed heartily. "This is very kind of you, I'm sure, Stonecrop," said his father. "Not a bit. He's a brave fellow, and'll be fit to drive on his own hook in a week or two. But I think you'd better let him drive you home now, for his mother don't like his having over much of the night air, and I promised not to take him farther than the square." "Come along then, Diamond," said his father, as he brought his cab up to the other, and moved off the box to the seat beside it. Diamond jumped across, caught at the reins, and said, "Good night, and thank you, Mr. Stonecrop," and drove away home, feeling more of a man than he had ever yet had a chance of feeling in all his life. Nor did his father find it necessary to give him a single hint as to his driving, only I suspect the fact that it was old Diamond, and old Diamond on his way to his stable, may have had something to do with young Diamond's success. "Well, child," said his mother when he entered the room, "you've not been long gone." "No, mother. Here I am. Give me the baby." "The baby's asleep," said his mother. "Then give him to me, and I'll lay him down." But as Diamond took him, he woke up and began to laugh, for he was indeed one of the merriest children. And no wonder, for he was as plump as a plum pudding, and had never had an ache or a pain that lasted more than 5 minutes at a time. Diamond sat down with him and began to sing to him. "Baby, baby, babbing, your father's gone a cabbing to catch a shilling for expense to make the baby babbing dance for old Diamond's a duck. They say he can swim, but the duck of Diamond's is baby, that's him. And of all the swallows, the merriest fellows that bake their cake with the water they shake out of the river flowing for ever, and make dust into clay on the shiniest day to build their nest. Father's the best, and mother's the whitest, and her eyes are the brightest of all the dams that watch their lambs cropping the grass where the waters pass, singing for ever. And of all the lambs with the shakingest tails and the jumpingest feet, baby's the funniest, baby's the bonniest, and he never wails, and he's always sweet, and Diamond's his nurse, and Diamond's his nurse, and Diamond's his nurse. When Diamond's rhymes grew scarce, he always began dancing the baby. Some people wondered that such a child could rhyme as he did, but his rhymes were not very good, for he was only trying to remember what he had heard the river sing at the back of the north wind. End of chapter 16. Recording by Maricel Cui. Chapter 17 of At the Back of the North Wind. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. Chapter 17. Diamond Goes On. Diamond became a great favourite with all the men about the mews. Some may think it was not the best place in the world for him to be brought up in, but it must have been, for there he was. At first he heard a good many rough and bad words, but he did not like them, and so they did him little harm. He did not know in the least what they meant, but there was something in the very sound of them, and in the tone of voice in which they were said, which Diamond felt to be ugly. So they did not even stick to him, not to say get inside him. He never took any notice of them, and his face shone pure and good in the middle of them, like a primrose in a hailstorm. At first, because his face was so quiet and sweet, with a smile always either awake or asleep in his eyes, and because he never heeded their ugly words and rough jokes, they said he wasn't all there, meaning that he was half an idiot, whereas he was a great deal more there than they had the sense to see. And before long the bad words found themselves ashamed to come out of the men's mouths when Diamond was near. The one would nudge the other to remind him that the boy was within hearing, and the words choked themselves before they got any farther. When they talked to him nicely, he had always a good answer, sometimes a smart one, ready, and that helped much to make them change their minds about him. One day Jack gave him a curry comb and a brush to try his hand upon old Diamond's coat. He used them so deftly, so gently, and yet so thoroughly, as far as he could reach, that the man could not help admiring him. "You must make haste and grow," he said. "It won't do to have a horse's belly clean and his back dirty, you know." "Give me a leg," said Diamond, and in a moment he was on the old horse's back with the comb and brush. He sat on his withers, and reaching forward as he ate his hay, he curried and he brushed, first at one side of his neck and then at the other. When that was done, he asked for a dressing comb, and combed his mane thoroughly. Then he pushed himself on to his back, and did his shoulders as far down as he could reach. Then he sat on his croup, and did his back and sides. Then he turned around like a monkey, and attacked his hind quarters, and combed his tail. This last was not so easy to manage, for he had to lift it up, and every now and then old Diamond would whisk it out of his hands, and once he sent the comb flying out of the stable door, to the great amusement of the men. But Jack fetched it again, and Diamond began once more, and did not leave off until he had done the whole business fairly well, if not in a first-rate experienced fashion. All the time the horse went on eating his hay, and, but with an occasional whisk of his tail when Diamond tickled or scratched him, took no notice of the proceeding. But that was all a pretence, for he knew very well who it was that was perched on his back, and rubbing away at him with the comb and the brush. So he was quite pleased and proud, and perhaps said to himself something like this: "I'm a stupid old horse, who can't brush his own coat, but there's my young godson on my back, cleaning me like an angel." I won't vouch for what the old horse was thinking, for it was very difficult to find out what any old horse is thinking. "Oh dear!" said Diamond when he had done, "I'm so tired." And he laid himself down at full length on old Diamond's back. By this time all the men in the stable were gathered about the two Diamonds, and all much amused. One of them lifted him down, and from that time he was a greater favourite than before. And if ever there was a boy who had a chance of being a prodigy at cab driving, Diamond was that boy, for the strife came to be who should have him out with him on the box. His mother, however, was a little shy of the company for him, and besides, she could not always spare him. Also, his father liked to have him himself when he could, so that he was more desired than enjoyed among the cabmen. But one way and another he did learn to drive all sorts of horses, and to drive them well, and that through the most crowded streets in London city. Of course there was the man always on the box seat beside him, but before long there was seldom the least occasion to take the reins from out of his hands. For one thing, he never got frightened, and consequently was never in too great a hurry. Yet when the moment came for doing something sharp, he was always ready for it. I must once more remind my readers that he had been to the back of the north wind. One day, which was neither washing day nor cleaning day nor marketing day nor Saturday nor Monday, upon which consequently Diamond could be spared from the baby, his father took him on his own cab. After a stray job or two by the way, they drew up in the row upon the stand between Cockspur Street and Pall Mall. They waited a long time, but nobody seemed to want to be carried anywhere. By and by ladies would be going home from the Academy exhibition, and then there would be a chance for a job. Though, to be sure, said Diamond's father, with what truth I cannot say, but he believed what he said, some ladies is very hard, and keeps you to the bare sixpence a mile, when every one knows that ain't enough to keep a family and a cab upon. To be sure it's the law, but mayhap they may get more law than they like some day themselves. As it was very hot, Diamond's father got down to have a glass of beer himself, and give another to the old waterman. He left Diamond on the box. A sudden noise got up, and Diamond looked round to see what was the matter. There was a crossing near the cab-stand, where a girl was sweeping. Some rough young imps had picked a quarrel with her, and were now hauling at her broom to get it away from her. But as they did not pull all together, she was holding it against them, scolding and entreating alternately. Diamond was off his box in a moment, and running to the help of the girl. He got hold of the broom at her end, and pulled along with her. But the boys proceeded to rougher measures, and one of them hit Diamond on the nose, and made it bleed. And as he could not let go the broom to mind his nose, he was soon a dreadful figure. But presently his father came back, and missing Diamond, looked about. He had to look twice, however, before he could be sure that that was his boy in the middle of the tumult. He rushed in, and sent the assailants flying in all directions. The girl thanked Diamond, and began sweeping as if nothing had happened, while his father led him away. With the help of old Tom, the waterman, he was soon washed into decency, and his father set him on the box again, perfectly satisfied with the account he gave of the cause of his being in a fray. "I couldn't let them behave so to a poor girl, could I, father?" he said. "Certainly not, Diamond," said his father, quite pleased, for Diamond's father was a gentleman. A moment after, up came the girl, running, with her broom over her shoulder, and calling, "Cab there, cab!" Diamond's father turned instantly, for he was the foremost in the rank, and followed the girl. One or two other passing cabs heard the cry, and made for the place, but the girl had taken care not to call till she was near enough to give her friends the first chance. When they reached the curbstone, who should it be waiting for the cab but Mrs. and Miss Coleman? They did not look at the cabman, however. The girl opened the door for them. They gave her the address, and a penny. She told the cabman, and away they drove. When they reached the house, Diamond's father got down and rang the bell. As he opened the door of the cab, he touched his hat as he had been wont to do. The ladies both stared for a moment, and then exclaimed together, "Why, Joseph, can it be you?" "Yes, ma'am. Yes, miss," answered he, again touching his hat, with all the respect he could possibly put into the action. "It's a lucky day which I see you once more upon it." "Who would have thought it?" said Mrs. Coleman. "It's changed times for both of us, Joseph, and it's not very often we can have a cab even. But you see, my daughter is still very poorly, and she can't bear the motion of the omnibuses. Indeed, we meant to walk a bit first before we took a cab, but just at the corner, for as hot as the sun was, a cold wind came down the street, and I saw that Miss Coleman must not face it. But to think we should have fallen upon you, of all the cabmen in London! I didn't know you had got a cab." "Well, you see, ma'am, I had a chance of buying the old horse, and I couldn't resist him. There he is, looking at you, ma'am. Nobody knows the sense in that head of his." The two ladies went near to pat the horse, and then they noticed Diamond on the box. "Why, you've got both Diamonds with you," said Miss Coleman. "How do you do, Diamond?" Diamond lifted his cap and answered politely. "He'll be fit to drive himself before long," said his father proudly. "The old horse is a teaching of him." "Well, he must come and see us, now you've found us out. Where do you live?" Diamond's father gave the ladies a ticket with his name and address printed on it, and then Mrs. Coleman took out her purse, saying, "And what's your fare, Joseph?" "No, thank you, ma'am," said Joseph. "It was your own old horse as took you, and me you paid long ago." He jumped on his box before she could say another word, and with a parting salute drove off, leaving them on the pavement with the maid holding the door for them. It was a long time now since Diamond had seen North Wind, or even thought much about her, and as his father drove along, he was thinking not about her, but about the crossing sweeper, and was wondering what made him feel as if he knew her quite well, when he could not remember anything of her. But a picture arose in his mind of a little girl running before the wind and dragging her broom after her, and from that, by degrees, he recalled the whole adventure of the night when he got down from North Wind's back in a London street. But he could not quite satisfy himself whether the whole affair was not a dream which he had dreamed when he was a very little boy. Only he had been to the back of the North Wind since. There could be no doubt of that, for when he woke every morning, he always knew that he had been there again. And as he thought and thought, he recalled another thing that had happened that morning, which, although it seemed a mere accident, might have something to do with what had happened since. His father had intended going on the stand at King's Cross that morning, and had turned into Gray's Inn Lane to drive there, when they found the way blocked up, and upon inquiry were informed that a stack of chimneys had been blown down in the night, and had fallen across the road. They were just clearing the rubbish away. Diamond's father turned and made for Charing Cross. That night the father and mother had a great deal to talk about. "Poor things," said the mother. "It's worse for them than it is for us. You see, they've been used to such grand things, and for them to come down to a little poky house like that, it breaks my heart to think of it." "I don't know," said Diamond thoughtfully, "whether Mrs. Coleman had bells on her toes." "What do you mean, child?" said his mother. "She had rings on her fingers anyhow," returned Diamond. "Of course she had, as any lady would. What has that to do with it?" "When we were down at Sandwich," said Diamond, "you said you would have to part with your mother's ring, now we were poor." "Bless the child! He forgets nothing," said his mother. "Really, Diamond, a body would need to mind what they say to you." "Why?" said Diamond. "I only think about it." "That's just why," said the mother. "Why is that a why?" persisted Diamond, for he had not yet learned that grown-up people are not often so much grown up that they never talk like children, and spoilt ones too. "Mrs. Coleman is none so poor as all that yet. No, thank heaven, she's not come to that." "Is it a great disgrace to be poor?" asked Diamond, because of the tone in which his mother had spoken. But his mother, whether conscience stricken I do not know, hurried him away to bed, where after various attempts to understand her, resumed and resumed again in spite of invading sleep, he was conquered at last, and gave in, murmuring over and over to himself, "Why is why?" but getting no answer to the question. End of chapter 17. Recording by Marisel Quee. Chapter 18 of At the Back of the North Wind. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. Chapter 18. The Drunken Cabman. A few nights after this, Diamond woke up suddenly, believing he heard North Wind thundering along. But it was something quite different. South Wind was moaning round the chimneys, to be sure, for she was not very happy that night. But it was not her voice that had wakened Diamond. Her voice would only have lulled him to deeper sleep. It was a loud angry voice, now growling like that of a beast, now raving like that of a madman. And when Diamond came a little wider awake, he knew that it was the voice of the drunken cabman, the wall of whose room was at the head of his bed. It was anything but pleasant to hear, but he could not help hearing it. At length there came a cry from the woman, and then a scream from the baby. Thereupon Diamond thought it time that somebody did something, and as himself was the only somebody at hand, he must go and see whether he could not do something. So he got up and put on part of his clothes, and went down the stair, for the cabman's room did not open upon their stair, and he had to go out into the yard, and in at the next door. This, fortunately, the cabman, being drunk, had left open. By the time he reached their stair, all was still except the voice of the crying baby, which guided him to the right door. He opened it softly, and peeped in. There, leaning back in a chair, with his arms hanging down by his sides, and his legs stretched out before him and supported on his heels, sat the drunken cabman. His wife lay in her clothes upon the bed, sobbing, and the baby was wailing in the cradle. It was very miserable altogether. Now the way most people do when they see anything very miserable is to turn away from the sight and try to forget it. But Diamond began as usual to try to destroy the misery. The little boy was just as much one of God's messengers as if he had been an angel with a flaming sword, going out to fight the devil. The devil he had to fight just then was misery. And the way he fought him was the very best. Like a wise soldier, he attacked him first in his weakest point. That was the baby. For misery can never get such a hold of a baby as of a grown person. Diamond was knowing in babies, and he knew he could do something to make the baby happy. For although he had known only one baby as yet, and although not one baby is the same as another, yet they are so very much alike in some things. And he knew that one baby so thoroughly that he had good reason to believe he could do something for any other. I have known people who would have begun to fight the devil in a very different and very stupid way. They would have begun by scolding the idiotic cabman, and next they would make his wife angry by saying it must be her fault as well as his, and by leaving ill-bred though well-meant shabby little books for them to read, which they were sure to hate the sight of, while all the time they would not have put out a finger to touch the wailing baby. But Diamond had him out of the cradle in a moment, set him up on his knee, and told him to look at the light. Now all the light there was came only from a lamp in the yard, and it was a very dingy and yellow light, for the glass of the lamp was dirty, and the gas was bad, but the light that came from it was, notwithstanding, as certainly light as if it had come from the sun itself, and the baby knew that, and smiled to it. And although it was indeed a wretched room which that lamp lighted, so dreary and dirty and empty and hopeless, there in the middle of it sat Diamond on a stool, smiling to the baby, and the baby on his knees, smiling to the lamp. The father of him sat staring at nothing, neither asleep nor awake, not quite lost in stupidity either, for through it all he was dimly angry with himself. He did not know why. It was that he had struck his wife. He had forgotten it, but was miserable about it notwithstanding. And this misery was the voice of the great love that had made him and his wife and the baby and Diamond, speaking in his heart, and telling him to be good. For that great love speaks in the most wretched and dirty hearts. Only the tone of its voice depends on the echoes of the place in which it sounds. On Mount Sinai it was thunder. In the cabman's heart it was misery. In the soul of St. John it was perfect blessedness. By and by he became aware that there was a voice of singing in the room. This, of course, was the voice of Diamond singing to the baby. Song after song, every one as foolish as another to the cabman, for he was too tipsy to part one word from another. All the words mixed up in his ear in a gurgle without division or stop, for such was the way he spoke himself when he was in this horrid condition. But the baby was more than content with Diamond's songs, and Diamond himself was so contented with what the songs were all about, that he did not care a bit about the songs themselves, if only baby liked them. But they did the cabman good as well as the baby and Diamond, for they put him to sleep, and the sleep was busy all the time it lasted, smoothing the wrinkles out of his temper. At length Diamond grew tired of singing, and began to talk to the baby instead, and as soon as he stopped singing, the cabman began to wake up. His brain was a little clearer now, his temper a little smoother, and his heart not quite so dirty. He began to listen, and he went on listening, and heard Diamond saying to the baby something like this, for he thought the cabman was asleep. "Poor daddy! Baby's daddy takes too much beer and gin, and that makes him somebody else, and not his own self at all. Baby's daddy would never hit baby's mammy if he didn't take too much beer. He's very fond of baby's mammy, and works from morning to night to get her breakfast and dinner and supper, only at night he forgets, and pays the money away for beer. And they put nasty stuff in beer, I heard my daddy say, that drives all the good out and lets all the bad in. Daddy says when a man takes a drink, there's a thirsty devil creeps into his inside, because he knows he will always get enough there. And the devil is always crying out for more drink, and that makes the man thirsty, and so he drinks more and more till he kills himself with it. And then the ugly devil creeps out of him, and crawls about on his belly, looking for some other cabman to get into, that he may drink, drink, drink. That's what my daddy says, baby. And he says too, the only way to make the devil come out is to give him plenty of cold water and tea and coffee, and nothing at all that comes from the public house. For the devil can't abide that kind of stuff, and creeps out pretty soon, for fear of being drowned in it. But your daddy will drink the nasty stuff. Poor man! I wish he wouldn't, for it makes mammy cross with him, and no wonder. And then, when mammy's cross, he's crosser, and there's nobody in the house to take care of them but baby. And you do take care of them, baby, don't you, baby? I know you do. Babies always take care of their fathers and mothers, don't they, baby? That's what they come for, isn't it, baby? And when daddy stops drinking beer and nasty gin with turpentine in it, father says, then mammy will be so happy and look so pretty, and daddy will be so good to baby, and baby will be as happy as a swallow, which is the merriest fellow, and Diamond will be so happy too. And when Diamond's a man, he'll take baby out with him on the box, and teach him to drive a cab." He went on with chatter like this till baby was asleep, by which time he was tired, and father and mother were both wide awake, only rather confused, the one from the beer, the other from the blow, and staring, the one from his chair, the other from her bed, at Diamond. But he was quite unaware of their notice, for he sat half asleep, with his eyes wide open, staring in his turn, though without knowing it, at the cabman, while the cabman could not withdraw his gaze from Diamond's white face and big eyes. For Diamond's face was always rather pale, and now it was paler than usual with sleeplessness, and the light of the street lamp upon it. At length he found himself nodding, and he knew then it was time to put the baby down, lest he should let him fall. So he rose from the little three-legged stool, and laid the baby in the cradle, and covered him up. It was well. It was a warm night, and he did not want much covering, and then he all but staggered out of the door. He was so tipsy himself with sleep. "Wife," said the cabman, turning towards the bed, "I do somehow believe that were an angel just gone. Did you see him, wife? He weren't very big, and he hadn't got none o' them wingses, you know. It were one o' them baby angels you see on the gravestones, you know." "Nonsense, hubby," said his wife. "But it's just as good. I might say better, for you can catch hold of him when you like. That's little Diamond, as everybody knows, and a duck o' diamonds he is. No woman could wish for a better child than he be." "I heard on him in the stable, but I ne'er see the brat afore. Come, old girl, let bygones be bygones. Gie us a kiss, we'll go to bed." The cabman kept his cab in another yard, although he had his room in this. He was often late in coming home, and was not one to take notice of children, especially when he was tipsy, which was oftener than not. Hence, if he had ever seen Diamond, he did not know him. But his wife knew him well enough, as did every one else who lived all day in the yard. She was a good-natured woman. It was she who had got the fire lighted and the tea ready for them when Diamond and his mother came home from Sandwich. And her husband was not an ill-natured man either, and when in the morning he recalled not only Diamond's visit, but how he himself had behaved to his wife, he was very vexed with himself, and gladdened his poor wife's heart by telling her how sorry he was. And for a whole week after he did not go near the public house, hard as it was to avoid it, seeing a certain rich brewer had built one, like a trap to catch souls and bodies in, at almost every corner he had to pass on his way home. Indeed, he was never quite so bad after that, though it was some time before he began really to reform. End of chapter 18. Recording by Marisol Kui. Chapter 19 of At the Back of the North Wind. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. Chapter 19. Diamond's Friends. One day, when old Diamond was standing with his nose in his bag between Pall Mall and Cockspur Street, and his master was reading the newspaper on the box of his cab, which was the last of a good many in the row, little Diamond got down for a run, for his legs were getting cramped with sitting. And first of all he strolled with his hands in his pockets up to the crossing, where the girl and her broom were to be found in all weathers. Just as he was going to speak to her, a tall gentleman stepped upon the crossing. He was pleased to find it so clean, for the streets were muddy, and he had nice boots on. So he put his hand in his pocket, and gave the girl a penny. But when she gave him a sweet smile in return, and made him a pretty curtsy, he looked at her again and said, "Where do you live, my child?" "Paradise Row," she answered. "Next door to the Adam and Eve, down the area." "Whom do you live with?" he asked. "My wicked old granny," she replied. "You shouldn't call your granny wicked," said the gentleman. "But she is," said the girl, looking up confidently in his face. "If you don't believe me, you can come and take a look at her." The words sounded rude, but the girl's face looked so simple that the gentleman saw she did not mean to be rude, and became still more interested in her. "Still, you shouldn't say so," he insisted. "Shouldn't I? Everybody calls her wicked old granny, even them that's as wicked as her. You should hear her swear. There's nothing like it in the Row. Indeed, I assure you, sir, there's ne'er a one of them can shut my granny up once she gets right a-going. You must put her in a passion first, you know. It's no good till you do that. She's so old now. How she do make 'em laugh, to be sure." Although she called her wicked, the child spoke so as plainly to indicate pride in her granny's preeminence in swearing. The gentleman looked very grave to hear her, for he was sorry that such a nice little girl should be in such bad keeping. But he did not know what to say next, and stood for a moment with his eyes on the ground. When he lifted them, he saw the face of Diamond looking up in his. "Please, sir," said Diamond, "her granny's very cruel to her sometimes, and shuts her out in the streets at night, if she happens to be late." "Is this your brother?" asked the gentleman of the girl. "No, sir." "How does he know your grandmother then? He does not look like one of her sort." "Oh no, sir. He's a good boy, quite." Here she tapped her forehead with her finger in a significant manner. "What do you mean by that?" asked the gentleman, while Diamond looked on smiling. "The cabbies call him God's baby," she whispered. He's not right in the head, you know. A tile loose." Still Diamond, though he heard every word, and understood it too, kept on smiling. What could it matter what people called him, so long as he did nothing he ought not to do? And besides, God's baby was surely the best of names. "Well, my little man, and what can you do?" asked the gentleman, turning towards him, just for the sake of saying something. "Drive a cab," said Diamond. "Good. And what else?" he continued, for accepting what the girl had said, he regarded the still sweetness of Diamond's face as a sign of silliness, and wished to be kind to the poor little fellow. "Nurse a baby," said Diamond. "Well, and what else?" "Clean father's boots, and make him a bit of toast for his tea." "You're a useful little man," said the gentleman. "What else can you do?" "Not much that I know of," said Diamond. "I can't curry a horse, except somebody puts me on his back, so I don't count that." "Can you read?" "No, but mother and father can, and they're going to teach me some day soon." "Well, here's a penny for you." "Thank you, sir." "And when you have learned to read, come to me, and I'll give you 6 pence and a book with fine pictures in it." "Please, sir, where am I to come?" asked Diamond, who was too much a man of the world not to know that he must have the gentleman's address before he could go and see him. "You're no such silly," thought he, as he put his hand in his pocket and brought out a card. "There," he said, "your father will be able to read that and tell you where to go." "Yes, sir, thank you, sir," said Diamond, and put the card in his pocket. The gentleman walked away, but turning round a few paces off, saw Diamond give his penny to the girl, and walking slower, heard him say, "I've got a father and a mother and little brother, and you've got nothing but a wicked old granny. You may have my penny." The girl put it beside the other in her pocket, the only trustworthy article of dress she wore. Her grandmother always took care that she had a stout pocket. "Is she as cruel as ever?" asked Diamond. "Much the same, but I gets more coppers now than I used to, and I can get summat to eat, and take browns enough home besides to keep her from grumbling. It's a good thing she's so blind, though." "Why?" asked Diamond. "'Cause if she was as sharp in the eyes as she used to be, she would find out I never eats her broken victuals, and then she'd know I must get something somewheres." "Doesn't she watch you then?" "Of course she do. Don't she just! But I make believe and drop it in my lap, and then hitch it into my pocket." "What would she do if she found you out?" "She'd never give me no more." "But you don't want it." "Yes, I do want it." "What do you do with it then?" "Give it to Cripple Jim." "Who's Cripple Jim?" "A boy in the Row. His mother broke his leg when he were a kid, so he's never come to much. But he's a good boy is Jim, and I love Jim dearly. I always keeps off a penny for him, leastways as often as I can. But there, I must sweep again, for them buzzes makes no end of dirt." "Diamond, Diamond!" cried his father, who was afraid he might get no good by talking to the girl. And Diamond obeyed, and got up again upon the box. He told his father about the gentleman, and what he had promised him if he would learn to read, and showed him the gentleman's card. "Why, it's not many doors from the Mews," said his father, giving him back the card. "Take care of it, my boy, for it may lead to something. God knows in these hard times a man wants as many friends as he's ever likely to get." "Haven't you got friends enough, father?" asked Diamond. "Well, I have no right to complain, but the more the better, you know." "Just let me count," said Diamond. And he took his hands from his pockets, and spreading out the fingers of his left hand, began to count, beginning at the thumb. "There's mother first, and then baby, and then me. Next there's old Diamond, and the cab. No, I won't count the cab, for it never looks at you, and when Diamond's out of the shaft it's nobody. Then there's the man that drinks next door, and his wife and his baby." "They're no friends of mine," said his father. "Well, they're friends of mine," said Diamond. His father laughed. "Much good they'll do you," he said. "How do you know they won't?" returned Diamond. "Well, go on," said his father. Then there's Jack and Mr. Stonecrop, and dearie me, not to have mentioned Mr. Coleman and Mrs. Coleman and Miss Coleman and Mrs. Crump. And then there's the clergyman that spoke to me in the garden that day the tree was blown down." "What's his name?" "I don't know his name." "Where does he live?" "I don't know." "How can you count him then?" "He did talk to me, and very kind like too." His father laughed again. "Why, child, you're just counting everybody you know. That don't make them friends." "Don't it? I thought it did. Well, but they shall be my friends. I shall make them." "How will you do that?" "They can't help themselves then, if they would. If I choose to be their friend, you know, they can't prevent me. Then there's that girl at the crossing." "A fine set of friends you do have, to be sure, Diamond." "Surely she's a friend anyhow, father. If it hadn't been for her, you would never have got Mrs. Coleman and Miss Coleman to carry home." His father was silent, for he saw that Diamond was right, and was ashamed to find himself more ungrateful than he had thought. "Then there's the new gentleman," Diamond went on. "If he do as he say," interposed his father. "And why shouldn't he? I dare say 6 pence ain't too much for him to spare. But I don't quite understand, father. Is nobody your friend but the one that does something for you?" "No, I won't say that, my boy. You would have to leave out baby then." "Oh no, I shouldn't. Baby can laugh in your face, and crow in your ears, and make you feel so happy. Call you that nothing, father?" The father's heart was fairly touched now. He made no answer to this last appeal, and Diamond ended off with saying, "And there's the best of mine to come yet, and that's you, daddy. Except it be mother, you know. You're my friend, daddy, ain't you? And I'm your friend, ain't I?" "And God for us all," said his father. And then they were both silent, for that was very solemn. End of chapter 19. Recording by Maricel Kui. Chapter 20 of At the Back of the North Wind. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. Chapter 20. Diamond Learns to Read. The question of the tall gentleman as to whether Diamond could read or not set his father thinking it was high time he could, and as soon as old Diamond was suppered and bedded, he began the task that very night. But it was not much of a task to Diamond, for his father took for his lesson book those very rhymes his mother had picked up on the seashore, and as Diamond was not beginning too soon, he learned very fast indeed. Within a month he was able to spell out most of the verses for himself. But he had never come upon the poem he thought he heard his mother read from that day. He had looked through and through the book several times, after he knew the letters and a few words, fancying he could tell the look of it, but had always failed to find one more like it than another. So he wisely gave up the search till he could really read. Then he resolved to begin at the beginning, and read them all straight through. This took him nearly a fortnight. When he had almost reached the end, he came upon the following verses, which took his fancy much, although they were certainly not very like those he was in search of. Little Boy Blue. Little Boy Blue lost his way in a wood, seeing apples and cherries, roses and honey. He said, "I would not go back if I could, it's all so jolly and funny." He sang, "This wood is all my own, apples and cherries, roses and honey. So I'll sit here like a king on my throne, all so jolly and funny." A little snake crept out of the tree, apples and cherries, roses and honey. "Lie down at my feet, little snake," said he, all so jolly and funny. A little bird sang in the tree overhead, apples and cherries, roses and honey. "Come and sing your song on my finger instead, all so jolly and funny." The snake coiled up, and the bird flew down, and sang him the song of Birdie Brown. Little Boy Blue found it tiresome to sit, and he thought he had better walk on a bit. So up he got, his way to take, and he said, "Come along, little bird and snake." And waves of snake over the damp leaves passed, and the snake went first and Birdie Brown last. By Boy Blue's head with flutter and dart flew Birdie Brown with its song in its heart. He came where the apples grew red and sweet. Tree, drop me an apple down at my feet. He came where the cherries hung plump and red. Come to my mouth, sweet kisses, he said. And the boughs bow down, and the apples they dapple, the grass too many for him to grapple. And the cheeriest cherries, with never a miss, fall to his mouth, each a full-grown kiss. He met a little brook singing a song. He said, "Little brook, you are going wrong. You must follow me, follow, I say. Do as I tell you, and come this way." And the song-singing, sing-songing forest brook leaped from its bed and after him took. Followed him, followed, and pale and wan, the dead leaves rustled as the water ran, and every bird high up on the bough, and every creature low down below. He called, and the creatures obeyed the call, took their legs and wings and followed him all. Squirrels that carried their tails like a sack, each on his own little humpy brown back. Householder snails and slugs all tails, and butterflies, flutterbees, ships all sails. And weasels and owsels and mice and larks, and owls and rear mice and harky darks, all went running and creeping and flowing after the merry boy fluttering and going. The dappled fawns fawning, the fallow deer following, the swallows and flies flying and swallowing, cockchafers, henchafers, cockyolly birds, cockroaches, henroaches, cuckoos in herds. The spider forgot, and followed him spinning, and lost all his fret from end to beginning. The gay wasp forgot his rings and his waist, he never had made such undignified haste. The dragonflies melted to mist with their hurrying, the mole in his moleskins left his burrowing. The bees went buzzing, so busy and beesy, and the midges in columns so upright and easy. But Little Boy Blue was not content, calling for followers still as he went, blowing his horn and beating his drum, and crying aloud, "Come, all of you, come!" He said to the shadows, "Come after me!" And the shadows began to flicker and flee, and they flew through the wood, all flattering and fluttering over the dead leaves, flickering and muttering. And he said to the wind, come follow, with whistle and pipe and rustle and hollow. And the wind wound round at his desire, as if he had been the gold cock on the spire. And the cock itself flew down from the church, and left the farmers all in the lurch. They run and they fly, they creep and they come, everything, everything, all and some. The very trees they tugged at their roots, only their feet were too fast in their boots. After him leaning and straining and bending, as on through their boles he kept walking and wending, till out of the wood he burst on a lea, shouting and calling, "Come after me!" And then they rose up with a leafy hiss, and stood as if nothing had been amiss. Little Boy Blue sat down on a stone, and the creatures came round him, every one. And he said to the clouds, "I want you there." And down they sank through the thin blue air. And he said to the sunset far in the west, "Come here, I want you, I know best." And the sunset came and stood up on the wold, and burned and glowed in purple and gold. Then Little Boy Blue began to ponder, "What's to be done with them all, I wonder?" Then Little Boy Blue he said quite low, "What to do with you all, I am sure I don't know." Then the clouds clodded down till dismal it grew, the snake sneaked close, round Birdie Brown flew. The brook sat up like a snake on its tail, and the wind came up with a "What will you?" wail. And all the creatures sat and stared. The mole opened his very eyes and glared. And for rats and bats and the world and his wife, Little Boy Blue was afraid of his life. Then Birdie Brown began to sing, and what he sang was the very thing. "You have brought us all hither, Little Boy Blue. Pray, what do you want us all to do?" Go away," said Little Boy Blue. "I'm sure I don't want you. Get away, do." "No, no, 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 yes, and no, no," sang Birdie Brown. "It mustn't be so. We cannot for nothing come here and away. Give us some work, or else we stay." "Oh dear, and oh dear," with sob and with sigh, said Little Boy Blue, and began to cry. But before he got far, he thought of a thing, and up he stood and spoke like a king. "Why do you hustle and jostle and bother? Off with you all! Take me back to my mother! The sunset stood at the gates of the west. Follow me, follow me! Came from Birdie Brown's breast. I am going that way as fast as I can, said the brook, as it sank and turned and ran. Back to the woods fled the shadows like ghosts. If we stay, we shall be missed from our posts. Said the wind with a voice that had changed its cheer, I was just going there when you brought me here. That's where I live, said the sack-backed squirrel, and he turned his sack with a swing and a swirl. Said the cock of the spire, his father's churchwarden. Said the brook running faster, I run through his garden. Said the mole, 200 worms, there I caught 'em last year, and I'm going again next autumn. Said they all, if that's where you want us to steer for, what in earth or in water did you bring us here for? Never you mind, said Little Boy Blue, that's what I tell you. If that you won't do, I'll get up at once and go home without you. I think I will. I begin to doubt you. He rose, and up rose the snake on its tail, and hissed 3 times, half a hiss, half a wail. Little Boy Blue tried to go past him, but wherever he turned sat the snake and faced him. If you don't get out of my way, he said, I tell you, snake, I will break your head. The snake he neither would go nor come, so he hit him hard with the stick of his drum. The snake fell down as if he were dead, and Little Boy Blue set his foot on his head. And all the creatures they marched before him, and marshalled him home with high cockalorum. And Birdie Brown sang twir, twitter, twir, twee, apples and cherries, roses and honey, Little Boy Blue has listened to me, all so jolly and funny. End of chapter 20. Recording by Maricel Quee. Chapter 21 of At the Back of the North Wind. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. Chapter 21. Sal's Nanny. Diamond managed with many blunders to read this rhyme to his mother. "Isn't it nice, mother?" he said. "Yes, it's pretty," she answered. "I think it means something," returned Diamond. "I'm sure I don't know what," she said. "I wonder if it's the same boy. Yes, it must be the same. Little Boy Blue, you know. Let me see, how does that rhyme go? Little Boy Blue, come blow me your horn. Yes, of course it is, for this one went blowing his horn and beating his drum. He had a drum too. Little Boy Blue, come blow me your horn. The sheep's in the meadow, the cow's in the corn. He had to keep them out, you know, but he wasn't minding his work. It goes, where's the little boy that looks after the sheep? He's under the haystack fast asleep. There, you see, mother. And then, let me see, who'll go and wake him? No, not I, for if I do, he'll be sure to cry. So I suppose nobody did wake him. He was a rather cross little boy, I dare say, when woke up, and when he did wake of himself, and saw the mischief the cow had done to the corn, instead of running home to his mother, he ran away into the wood and lost himself. Don't you think that's very likely, mother?" "I shouldn't wonder," she answered. So you see he was naughty, for even when he lost himself he did not want to go home. Any of the creatures would have shown him the way if he had asked it, all but the snake. He followed the snake, you know, and he took him farther away. I suppose it was a young one of the same serpent that tempted Adam and Eve. Father was telling us about it last Sunday, you remember." "Bless the child!" said his mother to herself, and then added aloud, finding that Diamond did not go on, "Well, what next?" "I don't know, mother. I'm sure there's a great deal more, but what it is I can't say. I only know that he killed the snake. I suppose that's what he had a drumstick for. He couldn't do it with his horn." "But surely you're not such a silly to take it all for true, Diamond?" "I think it must be. It looks true. That killing of the snake looks true. It's what I've got to do so often." His mother looked uneasy. Diamond smiled full in her face and added, "When baby cries and won't be happy, and when father and you talk about your troubles, I mean." This did little to reassure his mother, and lest my reader should have his qualms about it too, I ventured to remind him once more that Diamond had been to the back of the north wind. Finding she made no reply, Diamond went on. "In a week or so I shall be able to go to the tall gentleman and tell him I can read, and I'll ask him if he can help me to understand the rhyme." But before the week was out he had another reason for going to Mr. Raymond. For 3 days, on each of which, at one time or other, Diamond's father was on the same stand near the National Gallery, the girl was not at her crossing, and Diamond got quite anxious about her, fearing she must be ill. On the 4th day, not seeing her yet, he said to his father, who had that moment shut the door of his cab upon a fare, "Father, I want to go and look after the girl. She can't be well." "All right," said his father. "Only take care of yourself, Diamond." So saying, he climbed on his box and drove off. He had great confidence in his boy, you see, and would trust him anywhere. But if he had known the kind of place in which the girl lived, he would perhaps have thought twice before he allowed him to go alone. Diamond, who did know something of it, had not, however, any fear. From talking to the girl, he had a good notion of whereabout it was, and he remembered the address well enough, so by asking his way some 20 times, mostly of policemen, he came at length pretty near the place. The last policeman he questioned looked down upon him from the summit of 6 feet 2 inches, and replied with another question, but kindly. "What do you want there, my small kid? It ain't where you was bred, I guess." "No, sir," answered Diamond. "I live in Bloomsbury." "That's a long way off," said the policeman. "Yes, it's a good distance," answered Diamond, "but I find my way about pretty well. Policemen are always kind to me." "But what on earth do you want here?" Diamond told him plainly what he was about, and of course the man believed him, for nobody ever disbelieved Diamond. People might think he was mistaken, but they never thought he was telling a story. "It's an ugly place," said the policeman. "Is it far off?" asked Diamond. "No, it's next door almost, but it's not safe." "Nobody hurts me," said Diamond. "I must go with you, I suppose." "Oh no, please not," said Diamond. "They might think I was going to meddle with them, and I ain't, you know." "Well, do as you please," said the man, and gave him full directions. Diamond set off, never suspecting that the policeman, who was a kind-hearted man with children of his own, was following him close and watching him round every corner. As he went on, all at once he thought he remembered the place, and whether it was really so, or only that he had laid up the policeman's instructions well in his mind, he went straight for the cellar of old Sal. "He's a sharp little kid anyhow, for as simple as he looks," said the man to himself. "Not a wrong turn does he take. But old Sal's a rum one for such a child to pay a morning visit to. She's worse when she's sober than when she's half drunk. I've seen her when she'd have torn him in pieces." Happily then for Diamond, old Sal had gone out to get some gin. When he came to her door at the bottom of the area stair and knocked, he received no answer. He laid his ear to the door and thought he heard a moaning within. So he tried the door, and found it was not locked. It was a dreary place indeed, and very dark, for the window was below the level of the street, and covered with mud, while over the grating, which kept people from falling into the area, stood a chest of drawers, placed there by a dealer in second-hand furniture, which shut out almost all the light, and the smell in the place was dreadful. Diamond stood still for a while, for he could see next to nothing, but he heard the moaning plainly enough now. When he got used to the darkness, he discovered his friend lying with closed eyes and a white suffering face on a heap of little better than rags in a corner of the den. He went up to her and spoke, but she made him no answer. Indeed, she was not in the least aware of his presence, and Diamond saw that he could do nothing for her without help. So taking a lump of barley sugar from his pocket, which he had brought for her as he came along, and laying it beside her, he left the place, having already made up his mind to go and see the tall gentleman, Mr. Raymond, and ask him to do something for Sal's Nanny, as the girl was called. By the time he got up the area steps, 3 or 4 women who had seen him go down were standing together at the top waiting for him. They wanted his clothes for their children, but they did not follow him down lest Sal should find them there. The moment he appeared, they laid their hands on him, and all began talking at once, for each wanted to get some advantage over her neighbours. He told them quite quietly, for he was not frightened, that he had come to see what was the matter with Nanny. "What do you know about Nanny?" said one of them fiercely. "Wait till old Sal comes home and you'll catch it, for going prying into her house when she's out. If you don't give me your jacket directly, I'll go and fetch her." "I can't give you my jacket," said Diamond. "It belongs to my father and mother, you know. It's not mine to give, is it now? You would not think it right to give away what wasn't yours, would you now?" "Give it away! No, that I wouldn't. I'd keep it," she said with a round laugh. "But if the jacket ain't yours, what right have you to keep it? Here, Cherry, make haste. It'll be one go apiece." They all began to tug at the jacket, while Diamond stooped and kept his arms bent to resist them. Before they had done him or the jacket any harm, however, suddenly they all scampered away, and Diamond, looking in the opposite direction, saw the tall policeman coming towards him. "You had better have let me come with you, little man," he said, looking down in Diamond's face, which was flushed with resistance. "You came just in the right time, thank you," returned Diamond. "They've done me no harm." "They would have if I hadn't been at hand, though." "Yes, but you were at hand, you know, so they couldn't." Perhaps the answer was deeper in purport than either Diamond or the policeman knew. They walked away together, Diamond telling his new friend how ill poor Nanny was, and that he was going to let the tall gentleman know. The policeman put him in the nearest way for Bloomsbury, and stepping out in good earnest, Diamond reached Mr. Raymond's door in less than an hour. When he asked if he was at home, the servant, in return, asked what he wanted. "I want to tell him something." "But I can't go and trouble him with such a message as that." "He told me to come to him, that is, when I could read, and I can." "How am I to know that?" Diamond stared with astonishment for one moment, then answered, "Why, I've just told you. That's how you know it." But this man was made of coarser grain than the policeman, and instead of seeing that Diamond could not tell a lie, he put his answer down as impudence, and saying, "Do you think I'm going to take your word for it?" shut the door in his face. Diamond turned and sat down on the doorstep, thinking with himself that the tall gentleman must either come in or come out, and he was therefore in the best possible position for finding him. He had not waited long before the door opened again, but when he looked round, it was only the servant once more. "Get away," he said. "What are you doing on the doorstep?" "Waiting for Mr. Raymond," answered Diamond, getting up. "He's not at home." "Then I'll wait till he comes," returned Diamond, sitting down again with a smile. What the man would have done next I do not know, but a step sounded from the hall, and when Diamond looked round yet again, there was the tall gentleman. "Who's this, John?" he asked. "I don't know, sir. An impertinent little boy as will sit on the doorstep." "Please, sir," said Diamond, "he told me you weren't at home, and I sat down to wait for you." "Eh? What?" said Mr. Raymond. "John, John, this will not do. Is it a habit of yours to turn away my visitors? There'll be some one else to turn away, I'm afraid, if I find any more of this kind of thing. Come in, my little man. I suppose you've come to claim your sixpence?" "No, sir, not that." "What? Can't you read yet?" "Yes, I can now a little, but I'll come for that next time. I came to tell you about Sal's Nanny." "Who's Sal's Nanny?" "The girl at the crossing you talked to the same day." "Oh, yes, I remember. What's the matter? Has she got run over?" Then Diamond told him all. Now Mr. Raymond was one of the kindest men in London. He sent at once to have the horse put to the brougham, took Diamond with him, and drove to the Children's Hospital. There he was well known to everybody, for he was not only a large subscriber, but he used to go and tell the children stories of an afternoon. One of the doctors promised to go and find Nanny, and do what could be done, have her brought to the hospital if possible. That same night they sent a litter for her, and as she could be of no use to old Sal until she was better, she did not object to having her removed. So she was soon lying in the fever ward, for the first time in her life, in a nice clean bed. But she knew nothing of the whole affair. She was too ill to know anything. End of chapter 21. Recording by Mary Selquy. Chapter 22 of At the Back of the North Wind. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. Chapter 22. Mr. Raymond's Riddle. Mr. Raymond took Diamond home with him, stopping at the Mews to tell his mother that he would send him back soon. Diamond ran in with the message himself, and when he reappeared he had in his hand the torn and crumpled book which North Wind had given him. "Ah, I see," said Mr. Raymond. "You are going to claim your sixpence now." "I wasn't thinking of that so much as of another thing," said Diamond. "There's a rhyme in this book I can't quite understand. I want you to tell me what it means, if you please." "I will if I can," answered Mr. Raymond. "You shall read it to me when we get home, and then I shall see." Still with good many blunders, Diamond did read it after a fashion. Mr. Raymond took the little book and read it over again. Now, Mr. Raymond was a poet himself, and so, although he had never been at the back of the North Wind, he was able to understand the poem pretty well. But before saying anything about it, he read it over aloud, and Diamond thought he understood it much better already. "I'll tell you what I think it means," he then said. "It means that many people may have their way for a while, if they like, but it will get them into such troubles they'll wish they hadn't had it." I know," said Diamond. "Like the poor cabman next door. He drinks too much." "Just so," returned Mr. Raymond. "But when people want to do right, things about them will try to help them. Only they must kill the snake, you know." "I was sure the snake had something to do with it," cried Diamond triumphantly. A good deal more talk followed, and Mr. Raymond gave Diamond his sixpence. "What will you do with it?" he asked. "Take it home to my mother," he answered. "She has a teapot, such a black one, with a broken spout, and she keeps all her money in it. It ain't much, but she saves it up to buy shoes for me. And there's baby coming on famously, and he'll want shoes soon. And every sixpence is something, ain't it, sir?" "To be sure, my man. I hope you'll always make as good a use of your money." "I hope so, sir," said Diamond. "And here's a book for you, full of pictures and stories and poems. I wrote it myself, chiefly for the children of the hospital where I hope Nanny is going. I didn't mean I printed it, you know. I made it," added Mr. Raymond, wishing Diamond to understand that he was the author of the book. "I know what you mean. I make songs myself. They're awfully silly, but they please baby, and that's all they're meant for." "Couldn't you let me hear one of them now?" said Mr. Raymond. "No, sir, I couldn't. I forget them as soon as I've done with them. Besides, I couldn't make a line without baby on my knee. We make them together, you know. They're just as much baby's as mine. It's he that pulls them out of me." "I suspect the child's a genius," said the poet to himself, "and that's what makes people think him silly." Now, if any of my child readers want to know what a genius is, shall I try to tell them, or shall I not? I will give them one very short answer. It means one who understands things without any other body telling him what they mean. God makes a few such now and then to teach the rest of us. "Do you like riddles?" asked Mr. Raymond, turning over the leaves of his own book. "I don't know what a riddle is," said Diamond. "It's something that means something else, and you've got to find out what the something else is." Mr. Raymond liked the old-fashioned riddle best, and had written a few, one of which he now read. "I have only 1 foot, but thousands of toes. My 1 foot stands, but never goes. I have many arms, and they're mighty all, and hundreds of fingers, large and small. From the ends of my fingers my beauty grows. I breathe with my hair, and I drink with my toes. I grow bigger and bigger about the waist, and yet I am always very tight-laced. No one ever saw me eat.
I've no mouth to bite, yet I eat all day in the full sunlight. In the summer with song I shave and quiver, but in winter I fast and groan and shiver." "Do you know what that means, Diamond?" he asked when he had finished. "No, indeed, I don't," answered Diamond. "Then you can read it for yourself, and think over it, and see if you can find out," said Mr. Raymond, giving him the book. "And now you had better go home to your mother. When you've found the riddle, you can come again." If Diamond had had to find out the riddle in order to see Mr. Raymond again, I doubt if he would ever have seen him. "Oh, then, I think I hear some little reader say, 'He could not have been a genius, for a genius finds out things without being told.' I answer, genius finds out truths, not tricks. And if you do not understand that, I am afraid you must be content to wait till you grow older and know more." End of chapter 22. Recording by Maricel Kui. Chapter 23 of At the Back of the North Wind. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. Chapter 23. The Early Bird. When Diamond got home he found his father at home already, sitting by the fire and looking rather miserable, for his head ached and he felt sick. He had been doing night work of late, and it had not agreed with him, so he had given it up, but not in time, for he had taken some kind of fever. The next day he was forced to keep his bed, and his wife nursed him, and Diamond attended to the baby. If he had not been ill, it would have been delightful to have him at home. And the first day Diamond sang more songs than ever to the baby, and his father listened with some pleasure. But the next he could not bear even Diamond's sweet voice, and was very ill indeed. So Diamond took the baby into his own room, and had no end of quiet games with him there. If he did pull all his bedding on the floor, it did not matter, for he kept baby very quiet, and made the bed himself again, and slept in it with baby all the next night, and many nights after. But long before his father got well, his mother's savings were all but gone. She did not say a word about it in the hearing of her husband, lest she should distress him. And one night, when she could not help crying, she came into Diamond's room, that his father might not hear her. She thought Diamond was asleep, but he was not. When he heard her sobbing, he was frightened, and said, "Is father worse, mother?" "No, Diamond," she answered, as well as she could. "He's a good bit better." "Then what are you crying for, mother?" "Because my money is almost all gone," she replied. "Oh, mammy, you make me think of a little poem baby and I learned out of North Wind's book to-day. Don't you remember how I bothered you about some of the words?" "Yes, child," said his mother heedlessly, thinking only of what she should do after to-morrow. Diamond began and repeated the poem, for he had a wonderful memory. A little bird sat on the edge of her nest. Her yellow beaks slept as sound as tops. That day she had done her very best, and had filled every one of their little crops. She had filled her own just over full, and hence she was feeling a little dull. "Oh dear," she sighed, as she sat with her head sunk in her chest and no neck at all, while her crop stuck out like a feather bed, turned inside out and rather small. "What shall I do if things don't reform? I don't know where there's a single worm. I've had 20 to-day, and the children 5 each, besides a few flies and some very fat spiders. No one will say I don't do as I preach. I'm one of the best of bird providers. But where's the use? We want a storm. I don't know where there's a single worm." "There's 5 in my crop," said a wee bird, which woke at the sound of his mother's pain. "I know where there's 5." And with the word he tucked in his head and went off again. "The folly of childhood," sighed his mother, "has always been my special bother." The yellow beaks they slept on and on. They never had heard of the bogey to-morrow, but the mother sat outside making her moan, "She'll soon have to beg or steal or borrow, for she never can tell the night before where she shall find one red worm more." The fact, as I say, was she'd had too many. She couldn't sleep, and she called it virtue. motherly foresight, affection, any name you may call it that will not hurt you. So it was late ere she tucked her head in, and she slept so late it was almost a sin. But the little fellow who knew of 5, nor troubled his head about any more, woke very early, felt quite alive, and wanted a 6th to add to his store. He pushed his mother, the greedy elf, then thought he had better try for himself. When his mother awoke and had rubbed her eyes, feeling less like a burden, more like a mole, she saw him, fancy with what surprise, dragging a huge worm out of a hole. 'Twas of this same hero the proverb took form, "'Tis the early bird that catches the worm." "There, mother," said Diamond as he finished. "Ain't it funny?" "I wish you were like that little bird, Diamond, and could catch worms for yourself," said his mother, as she rose to go and look after her husband. Diamond lay awake for a few minutes, thinking what he could do to catch worms. It was very little trouble to make up his mind, however, and still less to go to sleep after it. End of chapter 23. Recording by Marisol Cui.
Chapter 24 of At the Back of the North Wind. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. Chapter 24. Another Early Bird. He got up in the morning as soon as he heard the men moving in the yard. He tucked in his little brother so that he could not tumble out of bed, and then went out, leaving the door open, so that if he should cry, his mother might hear him at once. When he got into the yard, he found the stable door just opened. "I'm the early bird, I think," he said to himself. "I hope I shall catch the worm." He would not ask any one to help him, fearing his project might meet with disapproval and opposition. With great difficulty, but with the help of a broken chair he brought down from his bedroom, he managed to put the harness on Diamond. If the old horse had the least objection to the proceeding, of course he could not have done it. But even when it came to the bridle, he opened his mouth for the bit, just as if he had been taking the apple which Diamond sometimes gave him. He fastened the cheek strap very carefully, just in the usual hole, for fear of choking his friend, or else letting the bit get amongst his teeth. It was a job to get the saddle on, but with the chair he managed it. If old Diamond had had an education in physics to equal that of the camel, he would have knelt down to let him put it on his back. But that was more than could be expected of him, and then Diamond had to creep quite under him to get hold of the girth. The collar was almost the worst part of the business, but there Diamond could help Diamond. He held his head very low till his little master had got it over and turned it round, and then he lifted his head and shook it on to his shoulders. The yoke was rather difficult, but when he had laid the traces over the horse's neck, the weight was not too much for him. He got him right at last, and led him out of the stable. By this time there were several of the men watching him, but they would not interfere. They were so anxious to see how he would get over the various difficulties. They followed him as far as the stable door, and there stood watching him again as he put the horse between the shafts, got them up one after the other into the loops, fastened the traces, the belly band, the breeching, and the reins. Then he got his whip. The moment he mounted the box, the men broke into a hearty cheer of delight at his success. But they would not let him go without a general inspection of the harness, and although they found it right, for not a buckle had to be shifted, they never allowed him to do it for himself again all the time his father was ill. The cheer brought his mother to the window, and there she saw her little boy setting out alone with the cab in the grey of morning. She tugged at the window, but it was stiff, and before she could open it, Diamond, who was in a great hurry, was out of the mews, and almost out of the street. She called, "Diamond, Diamond!" but there was no answer except from Jack. "Never fear for him, ma'am," said Jack. "It would be only a devil as would hurt him, and there ain't so many of them as some folk 'ud have you believe. A boy o' Diamond's size can harness a horse t'other Diamond's size, and put him to, right as a trivet. If he do upset the cab, he'll fall on his feet, ma'am." "But he won't accept the cab, will he, Jack?" "Not 'a, ma'am. Leastways he won't go for to do it." "I know as much as that myself. What do you mean?" "I mean he's a little likely to do it as the oldest man in the stable. How's the governor to day, ma'am?" "A good deal better, thank you," she answered, closing the window in some fear lest her husband should have been made anxious by the news of Diamond's expedition. He knew pretty well, however, what his boy was capable of, and although not quite easy, was less anxious than his mother. But as the evening drew on, the anxiety of both of them increased, and every sound of wheels made his father raise himself in his bed, and his mother peep out of the window. Diamond had resolved to go straight to the cab stand, where he was best known, and never to crawl for fear of getting annoyed by idlers. Before he got across Oxford Street, however, he was hailed by a man who wanted to catch a train, and was in too great a hurry to think about the driver. Having carried him to King's Cross in good time, and got a good fare in return, he set off again in great spirits, and reached the stand in safety. He was the first there after all. As the men arrived, they all greeted him kindly, and inquired after his father. "Ain't you afraid of the old horse running away with you?" asked one. "No, he wouldn't run away with me," answered Diamond. "He knows I'm getting the shillings for father, or if he did, he would only run home." "Well, you're a plucky one for all your girl's looks," said the man, "and I wish ye luck." "Thank you, sir," said Diamond. "I'll do what I can. I came to the old place, you see, because I knew you would let me have my turn here." In the course of the day one man did try to cut him out, but he was a stranger, and the shout the rest of them raised let him see it would not do, and made him so far ashamed, besides, that he went away crawling. Once in a block a policeman came up to him and asked him for his number. Diamond showed him his father's badge, saying with a smile, "Father's ill at home, so I came out with a cab. There's no fear of me. I can drive. Besides, the old horse could go alone." "Just as well, I dare say. You're a pair of them. But you're a rum un for a cabby, ain't you now?" said the policeman. "I don't know as I ought to let you go." "I ain't done nothing," said Diamond. "It's not my fault I'm no bigger. I'm big enough for my age." "That's where it is," said the man. "You ain't fit." "How do you know that?" asked Diamond, with his usual smile, and turning his head like a little bird. "Why, how are you to get out of this ruck now, when it begins to move?" "Just you get up on the box," said Diamond, "and I'll show you. There, that van's a moving now. Jump up." The policeman did as Diamond told him, and was soon satisfied that the little fellow could drive. "Well," he said, as he got down again, "I don't know as I should be right to interfere. Good luck to you, my little man." "Thank you, sir," said Diamond, and drove away. In a few minutes a gentleman hailed him. "Are you the driver of this cab?" he asked. "Yes, sir," said Diamond, showing his badge, of which he was proud. "You're the youngest cabman I ever saw. How am I to know you won't break all my bones?" "I would rather break all my own," said Diamond. "But if you're afraid, never mind me. I shall soon get another fare." "I'll risk it," said the gentleman, and opening the door himself, he jumped in. He was going a good distance, and soon found that Diamond got him over the ground well. Now, when Diamond had only to go straight ahead, and had not to mind so much what he was about, his thoughts always turned to the riddle Mr. Raymond had set him, and this gentleman looked so clever that he fancied he must be able to read it for him. He had given up all hope of finding it out for himself, and he could not plague his father about it when he was ill. He had thought of the answer himself, but fancied it could not be the right one, for to see how it all fitted required some knowledge of physiology. So when he reached the end of his journey, he got down very quickly, and with his head just looking in at the window, said, as the gentleman gathered his gloves and newspapers, "Please, sir, can you tell me the meaning of a riddle?" "You must tell me the riddle first," answered the gentleman, amused. Diamond repeated the riddle. "Oh, that's easy enough," he returned. "It's a tree." "Well, it ain't got no mouth, sure enough. But how then does it eat all day long?" "It sucks in its food through the tiniest holes in its leaves," he answered. "Its breath is its food, and it can't do it except in the daylight." "Thank you, sir, thank you." returned Diamond. "I'm sorry I couldn't find it out myself. Mr. Raymond would have been better pleased with me." "But you needn't tell him any one told you." Diamond gave him a stare which came from the very back of the north wind, where that kind of thing is unknown. "That would be cheating," he said at last. "Ain't you a cabby then?" "Cabbies don't cheat." "Don't they? I am of a different opinion." "I'm sure my father don't." "What's your fare, young innocent?" "Well, I think the distance is a good deal over 3 miles. That's 2 shillings. Only father says 6 pence a mile is too little, though we can't ask for more." "You're a deep one, but I think you're wrong. It's over 4 miles. Not much, but it is." "Then that's half a crown," said Diamond. "Well, here's 3 shillings. Will that do?" "Thank you kindly, sir. I'll tell my father how good you were to me. First to tell me my riddle, then to put me right about the distance, and then to give me 6 pence over. It'll help my father to get well again, it will." "I hope it may, my man. I shouldn't wonder if you're as good as you look, after all." As Diamond returned, he drew up at a stand he had never been on before. It was time to give Diamond his bag of chopped beans and oats. The men got about him and began to chaff him. He took it all good humouredly, until one of them, who was an ill-conditioned fellow, began to tease old Diamond by poking him roughly in the ribs, and making general game of him. That he could not bear, and the tears came in his eyes. He undid the nose bag, put it in the boot, and was just going to mount and drive away, when the fellow interfered, and would not let him get up. Diamond endeavoured to persuade him, and was very civil, but he would have his fun out of him, as he said. In a few minutes a group of idle boys had assembled, and Diamond found himself in a very uncomfortable position. Another cab drew up at the stand, and the driver got off and approached the assemblage. "What's up here?" he asked, and Diamond knew the voice. It was that of the drunken cabman. "Do you see this young oyster? He pretends to drive a cab," said his enemy. "Yes, I do sees him, and I sees you too. You'd better leave him alone. He ain't no oyster. He's an angel come down on his own business. You be off, or I'll be nearer you than quite agreeable." The drunken cabman was a tall, stout man, who did not look one to take liberties with. "Oh, if he's a friend of yours," said the other, drawing back. Diamond got out the nose bag again. Old Diamond should have his feed out now. "Yes, he's a friend o' mine, one o' the best I ever had. It's a pity he ain't a friend o' yourn. You'd be the better for it, but it ain't no fault of his." When Diamond went home at night, he carried with him 1 pound 1 shilling and 6 pence, besides a few coppers extra, which had followed some of the fares. His mother got very anxious indeed, so much that she was almost afraid, when she did hear the sound of his cab, to go and look, lest she should be yet disappointed again, and should break down before her husband. But there was the old horse, and there was the cab all right, and there was Diamond in the box, his pale face looking triumphant as a full moon in the twilight. When he drew up at the stable door, Jack came out, and after a good many friendly questions and congratulations, said, "You go in to your mother, Diamond. I'll put up the old horse. I'll take care on him. He do deserve some small attention, he do." "Thank you, Jack," said Diamond, and bounded into the house, and into the arms of his mother, who was waiting for him at the top of the stair. The poor anxious woman led him into his own room, sat down on his bed, took him on her lap as if he had been a baby, and cried. "How's father?" asked Diamond, almost afraid to ask. "Better, my child," she answered, "but uneasy about you, my dear." "Didn't you tell him I was the early bird gone out to catch the worm?" "That was what put it in your head, was it, you monkey?" said his mother, beginning to get better. "That or something else," answered Diamond, so very quietly that his mother held his head back and stared in his face. "Well, of all the children!" she said, and said no more. "And here's my worm," resumed Diamond. But to see her face as he poured the shillings and sixpences and pence into her lap, she burst out crying a second time, and ran with the money to her husband. And how pleased he was! It did him no end of good. But while he was counting the coins, Diamond turned to baby, who was lying awake in his cradle sucking his precious thumb, and took him up, saying, "Baby, baby, I haven't seen you for a whole year." And then he began to sing to him as usual, and what he sang was this, for he was too happy either to make a song of his own or to sing sense. It was one out of Mr. Raymond's book. The True Story of the Cat and the Fiddle. Hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle. He played such a merry tune that the cow went mad with the pleasure she had, and jumped right over the moon. But then, don't you see, before that could be, the moon had come down and listened. The little dog hearkened, so loud that he barkened. There's nothing like it, there isn't. Hey diddle diddle, went the cat and the fiddle. Hey diddle diddle dee dee. The dog laughed at the sport, till his cough cut him short. It was hey diddle diddle, oh me! And back came the cow with a merry merry low, for she'd humbled the man in the moon. The dish got excited, the spoon was delighted, and the dish waltzed away with the spoon. But the man in the moon, coming back too soon from the famous town of Norwich, caught up the dish, said, "It's just what I wish to hold my cold plum porridge," gave the cow a rat tat, flung water on the cat, and sent him away like a rocket, said, "Oh moon, there you are," got into her car, and went off with the spoon in his pocket. Hey ho diddle diddle, the wet cat and wet fiddle, they made such a caterwauling that the cow in a fright stood bolt upright, bellowing now and bawling, and the dog on his tail stretched his neck with a wail. But ho ho, said the man in the moon, no more in the south shall I burn my mouth, for I've found the dish and the spoon. End of chapter 24. Recording by Marisol Cui.